I am happy to welcome you all here for our annual Texas Women in HPC workshop. This year, we are very specifically talking to women in energy and about women in energy. My name is Melyssa Fratkin. I am the co-founder and co-chair of Texas Women in HPC, and I'm the industry programs director at the Texas Advanced Computing Center, and I'm also on the organizing committee for the Energy High Performance Computing Conference. So I had a lot of jobs this year. We are going to do a little bit of chatting about why we're here, what is the point of Texas Women in HPC, and we will have our keynote presentation by Dr. Yinka Opeke and our lightning talk by Jessica Dagostini, and then we'll talk about our future plans, our book club, and then maybe ask and answer some questions if you have any, and that'll be the whole shebang. So why are we here? The point of Texas Women in HPC is to bring together a diverse community of professionals in industry, academia, and government from advanced computing across the state of Texas, and indeed, in this case, this morning from around the world. And it is actually my goal to make it more about diversity in general in HPC and not just women. The organization, the overall international organization of Texas Women in HPC started in Europe, and there certainly women in high performance computing is a problem, but in the US, as we all well know, it's not just about women, it's about all kinds of diversity, from people with disabilities and people of different races and genders and everything, and we really need to work on raising awareness and broadening diversity. So that's why we're here. So right now, and these are my slides from, this slide is from last year, so probably, hopefully the percentages have gone up a little bit, but there's no way of knowing. Female attendance at SC peaked at 16% for SC19. The diversity committee at SC has become a regular thing and is pushing for broader diversity, bringing in new communities. We have lots of great new programs, the HPC immersion program, and wonderful things to help in HPC specifically. And we just had our first paper submitted on female participation in HPC conferences. And this was a paper where they reviewed all the papers submitted and found that women represented only 10% of all the authors, with large geographical variations, obviously, and small variations by sector of HPC. So whether that's in systems or in software, machine learning, engineering, things like that. So we got a lot of work to do. And then, of course, because why we're here, the challenge is women in energy and oil and gas. And this, again, this research is from a couple of years ago, this study, but the percentage of women working in oil and gas is low compared to pretty much almost everywhere else. E and that graph is hardware, and J is manufacturing. So we're all down around the same area. And of course, F is healthcare, and that's where women are the most represented in this group. But I found some more energy information this week from an International Energy Agency study in 2020. Women's participation in the energy sector is below that of the broader economy, which we know, right? 22% of the labor force in oil and gas and 32% in renewables. So good, but not great. And the interesting thing I found, they said that energy companies are less likely to participate in diversity initiatives, which is those surveys that say, what are you doing? And those activities to bring more diversity in. Companies with more diverse boards are more likely to report their gender composition, thanks to industry initiatives. In the US, the National Association for Female Executives, NAIF, and in Europe, the 30% Club. And so there's lots of statistics on the companies that are in the 30% Club have at least 30% women on their boards, and the ones that don't, and the energy companies are very much the ones that don't. They're also the ones that don't report. It's like, we're not doing it and we don't want to tell you about it. So it's going to be a lot of work, I think, to force that issue, to force this issue in the energy industry. But we're working on it. And does it matter? Yes, absolutely, it matters. And this is a quote I found in an article. By 2025, we're going to be a millennial and Generation Z workforce. And those two groups are much more inclusive and diverse. And if a business is not, then the workers are not going to want to go there. And so we're learning that. And it's scary because diversity is uncomfortable. When everyone in the room is like you, it's comfortable. And when people are different, you may not feel as comfortable, but it actually makes your team work better together because it's harder. But it requires a strong sense of team and organizational inclusion, and that's hard to build. So it's this is from a Harvard Business Review study, and it's interesting, but it's gonna be a challenge. It is hard. But there are some things as I was going through this and I'm reading and I'm thinking about our keynote speaker today and what we're talking about. And some of these quotes really, it's sort of started to, the blocks and the path started to become very clear. The lever of change is the person who's willing to stand for what they believe in. Women are willing to take those risks, right? So the energy, here are the things that sort of crystallized as I was doing this. The energy sector faces stark gender gaps in innovation and entrepreneurship. And then I saw this question: what if the energy transition, the transition to renewables, and gender equality were actually part of the same fight? What if we bring in more women and that helps us get to more renewable energy sources? And that was a very interesting question to pose and things to think about as we listen to our speakers today. So without any further ado, I am going to introduce Dr. Olanka Opeke. I hope I said that right. The CEO of Smart Gas. She is the founder and CEO of an organization called Trade Expo Africa, a Houston-based company focused on promoting bilateral trade relations, investment opportunities, educational advancements, international collaborations, and information exchange between businesses in the US and Africa. She received her Bachelor's of Science and Master's of Science in GIS from the University of Ibadan in Nigeria. And then she got another master's from Queen Mary University in London and a PhD from Walden University in Minnesota. I feel very, very underfunded at this point, undereducated. I'm undereducated. But we invited Dr. Opeke here to talk to us about her entrepreneurial journey and her latest venture, Smart Gas, which distributes cooking gas in Nigeria. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and Dr. Opeke can start sharing her slides.
Okay, thank you so much, Melyssa. And I'm so happy to be here. It is my pleasure to be given the opportunity to make a keynote address, at this year's Texas Women in HPC workshop, Energy Community Showcase. Because for those of you who enjoy storytelling, I'll be taking you on the journey, of how I birthed Smart Gas in Nigeria, the opportunities, the challenges inherent, our impact in the communities and the outlook for the future. It is also commendable that this is the 15th annual Energy High Performance Computing Conference. I know it was previously called the Oil and Gas High Performance Computing Conference, and I would like to thank the organizers for the opportunity to share our story. So I particularly find it interesting that some people think Africa is a country. I come across that a lot of times, but contrary to that belief, Africa is actually a continent with 54 sovereign countries. So Algeria, of course, being the largest in terms of land mass, but Nigeria being the largest in terms of population. We have an estimated population of about 206 million people. So you can see we are very rich in human capital. We're a country that has human capital. We have diverse culture, natural resources, agriculture is huge here, music, entertainment, and so many other endowments, But however, I'm based in Houston. I shuttled Houston and Nigeria because of my business in Nigeria, Smart Gas. And in Houston, Trade Expo Africa, like Melyssa mentioned, I consider myself really privileged, to experience life in the United States and in Nigeria. Because some of the conveniences and the structures that appear to be basic in the US are not that easily accessible in Nigeria. And I would say that this forms the basis of the comparison sometimes, and it influences my resolve as an individual, a business leader, and a CEO to introduce positive changes, in Nigeria, wherever I can find possible. In the context of what we're discussing today, and the increasing awareness on, energy transition, carbon neutralization, zero and net zero emissions, companies are now poised with the responsibilities of reviewing their operational processes by leveraging technology, upscaling their engineering, and identifying, sustainable ways to reduce carbon emission. Unfortunately, Nigeria is a bit late in this journey, because majority of our population still utilize solid fuels like charcoal, firewood, kerosene to cook. And that leads to deforestation in certain areas in the country. The associated risk because of the emissions that are coming out, bronchitis, a lot of lung issues, and of course, uncontrolled, emissions. And all of this negatively impacts the environment and invariably the climate. But the Nigerian government, however, have declared it a decade of gas. So they're taking a lot of steps in seeing how they can adopt, increasing domestic consumption, upscaling our infrastructure, creating intervention loans, fostering public-private partnerships, amongst other things. And that is why smart gas could not have been birthed at a better time, because it is essentially relevant, what we're doing in the industry now. And I can't wait to share my slides with you. And of course, at this point, I will share it, and I'll be going through the global gas demand and supply, an overview of the gas industry in Nigeria, the liquefied petroleum gas landscape, the opportunities, who we are as a company, our business model, our corporate social responsibilities, and the future outlook. A few terminologies I want you to keep in mind while I'm making this presentation is, for example, in the US, what you refer to as fuel for your vehicle, which is gas, we call it petrol. So when I'm going to be talking in my presentations and I say gas, I actually mean cooking gas, which is what you already have piped into your homes via center point or something. In my country, it's not really like that. There's no adequate city planning whereby you just turn on your cooktop, and then you have your gas. We still have to use what you call propane tanks, like the things you use for your cookouts, and things like that. We still have to buy them and then take them to the gas plants, refill it, and then hook it back to your cooktop. So I'll start sharing my slides, try and make it as brief as possible. And wait, see. Okay, I believe everyone can see my slides now. So I've given you like an overview of what I'm going to be talking about in my entire slide. And this is an overview of the gas demand globally. Based on the charts, you can see that the demand for gas is lowest in Africa, because like I said, for the most part, we have relied on solid fuels. And then in Central and South Africa was very low. And North America also had very high supply in terms of, gas. But however, we're hoping that the gas demand will grow a lot higher, over the next few years in Africa predominantly. It's also projected that gas consumption trends over the next 30 years, will evolve. And Europe will have a decline relatively, to what they have now. Africa, on the other hand, is expected to have an increase in terms of gas consumption. And most of those gas will be used to power electricity generation, because that's still an area that we struggle in Nigeria. In Nigeria, there's been so much focus on oil. We pretty much have kind of like mastered the art of oil, crude oil. We're one of the crude oil producing countries, but gas has just been very late in the game. But like I said, there's so much awareness on gas now. And we are estimated to have currently about 203 trillion cubic feet of gas. And right now, the production to revenue reserve ratio is below 1%. So you can see that there's huge room for growth, for adoption, for improvement. There's so much gas that we flare as well. As at 2020, they said that we have flared about 254 billion cubic feet of gas, which pretty much means that you have just flared it and you have wasted it. And that is an estimated financial loss of about $230 million. Also, only 26% of the country's market gas production in 2019 was consumed within Nigeria, and the bulk of it was exported to Spain, India, and France. But however, the government has mandated the major companies that produce gas in Nigeria to increase more of domestic usage and reduce more of exportation, because now a lot of people are adopting gas. At the time whereby it was, as at 2005, only about 55 million metric tons of gas was being used in Nigeria in terms of domestic usage. And as at now, we have about 1.2 million metric tons being used. So there's been an increment in terms of the adoption of cooking gas. And the government agencies and private sectors are doing everything to see how they can increase local production and consumption. These are the 5 major players in terms of the landscape in Nigeria. We have the producers and the suppliers. These are the guys, the IOCs, international, oil and gas companies, oil companies, NLNG. They're the ones that import the LPG, because majority of our LPG is still being imported because of lack of infrastructure. And like I mentioned, where not so much has been done in the past. And then we have the distributors. They are the ones that are in charge of the storage, the jetty operations, the transportation. And we have the bottling companies where smart gas falls as well, because we are the ones that get it, from the distribution companies. We bottle them in the cylinders that I told you about, the propane tanks, and then we sell to end users. The retailers are also the ones that sell directly to end users. And then we have our regulatory bodies who regulate the oil and gas sector. The major one is the one we call the Department of Petroleum Resources. They are the federal agency that actually regulates oil and gas industry in Nigeria. So Nigeria is estimated to have about 1,250 registered refilling plants. And like I said, with a population of close to 206 million people, that is really nothing. We have about 567 add-ons. Add-ons are kind of like bigger storage tanks that are installed in filling stations, where we call gas stations in the US, where you buy the gas for your vehicles. They now have gas, they have all these storage tanks, the add-ons, whereby people can just come, to buy the gas, and then they go home and all that. And in terms of the retailing as well, most of the retailing is happening in certain parts of Nigeria. There are 36 states in Nigeria. Most of the retailing happens in the Southwest. The North still has a lot of deficiency. So there's a lot of room for growth opportunities in terms of that industry. And then for the cylinder manufacturing, that is a very huge market, which is one of the places that we play in smart gas. And 70% of our cylinders are still being imported. And even though we have a handful of companies that manufacture these cylinders in Nigeria, it is still the supply is still really low. So government cannot really stop the importation of cylinders because it is still not adequate. So many people are also using expired cylinders. In the US, you will not know much about that because, like I said, you don't need to have those propane tanks, but for us, in Africa, and this I speak for, and this is what happens in most parts of Africa, these tanks are still the things that we use. And the average tank has a lifespan of 15 years. But you might go to somebody's home and the person has had his or her tank for over 20, 25 years. They haven't retested the tanks. And we're trying to advocate to tell them that these things are they're ticking time bombs. You need to buy newer cylinders, So the cylinder manufacturing industry is a totally big industry as well. In terms of the overview of the opportunities, quite honestly, at the time I started Smart Gas, I started it 2020. And that was really when I lost my dad. So we're barely 2 years old. But in terms of when we started operations, we actually started operations March of last year. And it was just at the onset of the COVID. I was in the US when my dad passed on and I couldn't travel. So I usually would tell people that I birthed Smart Gas in grief, And I guess just because I didn't want to just cry all the time, I think it was just birthed in my spirit, considering the fact that I have been an entrepreneur for the most of my life. So you get to a point whereby your mind is so active, you're able to identify opportunities, you're able to translate them, into actual realities, you're able to take, measurable steps, work with timelines, so sometimes when I birth ideas, I'm able to quickly, flesh up the framework. And when I thought about gas, I thought about it, okay, what is the gap? And these are the gaps. Accessibility. Like I said, there's lack of infrastructure. You go to certain parts in the country, you have to drive miles, you have to drive a long distance to get gas. Then the affordability. Talking about that, the smallest size of cylinder, which I'm going to show you shortly, retails for about 13,000 Naira. And that on the average would be about maybe $50. Now, based on World Bank statistics, they say that over 70% of Nigerians live below $1 a day. So by the time you're saying somebody who lives below $1 a day to afford a $50 propane tank, you can see that it's a mismatch. So the affordability is also an issue. And then we ask ourselves, how do we make this accessible to the less privileged communities? And then there's just a lack of awareness. A lot of them are just comfortable with using the firewood. They're comfortable because some of them just go to uncompleted, buildings, and they take some of the planks and they just turn them into firewood and they just use them. And I'm going to show you in a video shortly. And then the safety concerns, that also has to do with lack of awareness, ignorance in terms of information. And some of them are just like, oh, gas, we heard it can explode. We'd rather work with our firewood, so all of that. So there's so much that has to do in terms of advocacy, training, teaching them how to use it, the advantages, and it's even cheaper to use, gas than all the other solid fuels that they're using. So these are the majority of the gaps which we identified as opportunities to say there's a lot that we can do. But the difference in what we did is the technology we incorporated, into making gas accessible. And I'm going to show you that shortly. So who are we as Smart Gas? We are a technology company, like I said, operating in the downstream sector. And we have solutions that make the cooking gas buying process easier for people. Typically, when you're cooking and your gas runs out, which I'm sure any of you has never experienced in the US, but this happens all the time. You're in the middle of cooking a very sumptuous meal, and next thing the gas runs out on a Sunday when there's no retailer around you to even refill your cylinder from. That happens all the time. So we have a mobile app that tries to solve this problem. Sometimes you might be out of country, and then your nanny or your babysitter calls you and says, oh, I was trying to make food and there's no gas. And then maybe your driver is closed for the day, nobody for you to send. So there's so many scenarios whereby you can just be stuck and you're not able to refill your cylinder, So we create opportunities for people to be able to access gas. We sell cylinders. So these are the cylinders I told you about. The smallest is a 3 kg. So the units we use in Nigeria, we use kg and grams. In America, we use pounds and ounces. So these are the sizes that we import, branded Smart Gas. And then we wholesale gas to companies, restaurants, bars, manufacturing companies that are trying to transition from using diesel to power their machineries and equipment. We supply wholesale to them. I talked about the mobile app, and then we do the oil and gas procurement. These are some of our cylinders being manufactured for us in China. For us to manufacture it, there are standards for that as well. And we had to get some of the government agencies to give us approvals and permits to import them into the country so that they're sure that they're not substandard. So these are some of the products, some of our cylinders being imported, getting ready for export into Nigeria. And then the mobile app. So from the comfort of your home, the way our mobile app works, I can simply put it like we're the Amazon for gas in Nigeria, which means we connect the retailers, the gas retailers, to the buyers. So you have to sign up on the app to sell your gas. So Smart Gas is actually not selling gas on the app. We're just providing the technology that allows a gas seller, regardless of your location in the 36 states in Nigeria, to sign up your location to sell products. A client can also sign up on the app from wherever you are, whether you're in the US or in Nigeria. You can sign up to buy products from any retailer that is around you because it is powered by Google Maps. And then a driver can as well sign up on the app to fulfill orders. So I sign up on the app, I place an order, I see the closest retailers around me who are selling, I see their prices, I decide on the one to buy from, I can then decide to do a pickup whereby I go there and fulfill the order myself, or I use a delivery. If I decide to do a delivery, it gets on the dashboard of nearby drivers, just like Uber, and the driver picks it. He already sees the location he needs to go because the client has selected the retailer to buy from, and he fulfills that order. So pretty much that is the framework of how our mobile app works. And that talks about collaboration. And this is the first of its kind, because this way we are collaborating with every retailer in the market. We're also collaborating with every client. So now there's increased income for the retailer, because not only do you now have clients walking into your store to buy gas, you also have those who want to buy gas from the convenience of their homes. So that is increased sales for the retailer. For the driver as well is also additional income, because then you can be an Uber driver, you can be a Taxify driver, you can be a smart gas driver, a Lyft driver. You can combine all of that to increase your income. And then the convenience for the client. So this, we launched it October of last year, and we have, as a matter of fact, we received an award, and that was why I came to Nigeria. They recognized us for entrepreneurship and technological innovation, and it's really been awesome. We also do storage tanks. These tanks will typically be sold to companies that utilize LPG in bigger volumes, because these ones I showed you are mostly for households. So you see the first four, usually households. The 50 kg being the biggest orange one. Smaller hotels can use them, smaller bars, smaller restaurants. But when they start becoming much bigger brands, like the likes of the Hilton or the Marriott, and all the big names that we know, they usually have storage tanks because it allows them to keep bigger capacities. Also, retailers who want to retail to end users can also buy this one because they want to have add-ons, like I mentioned to you the other time, in filling stations. So we sell these, we procure them directly from Houston or from anywhere around, and then we export them to Nigeria, and then we sell them to end users. We do oil and gas procurements as well. Typically, our clients for these ones are construction companies, oil and gas servicing companies, manufacturing companies, and the likes of them. And usually these are value proposition. There's very low LPG penetration, which means it's a huge market for us to explore. There's diverse revenue streams. Like I mentioned, we're selling cylinders, we're selling gas, we're doing oil and gas procurements. There's the mobile app where we make commissions off every sale that goes on. We make commissions from the driver, and then we make commissions from the retailer as well. And it's a very scalable product because we are operating in 36 states. With a medium to long-term plan of intra-African expansions. And we're already having talks with some of my colleagues, in Ghana, Senegal, South Africa, and so many other places where they're still selling gas the rudimentary way. And then we're enjoying the early mover advantage. Like I said, we're the first in the market doing something like this. Our solutions are smart, and it's of course very convenient. So this is just a framework of the microeconomics of the assessments of Nigeria. I really wouldn't go much into that, but that's just for information purposes in terms of the security pressures. Our FX environment is extremely volatile right now. And that's part of the challenges that I'm going to talk about, doing business in Nigeria in the oil and gas sector as a woman, and just so many other issues. The major value drivers for LPG in Nigeria are, the LNG Train 7, the Gas Renaissance, and the Petroleum Industry Act. This act is a very big deal that was signed into bill last year, 2021, with the hope that we'll have quite a number of foreign investors that can invest in the infrastructure, in the storage, and distribution of LPG. Pretty much this is the same thing. And then the Smart Gas Foundation. Our Smart Gas Foundation, we started it on a very small note last year, Christmas last year, where we decided to spread the Christmas cheer and speak to donors, support systems, friends and families to make some donations so that we can donate free pre-filled 3 kg cylinders to less privileged communities. And since that time, honestly, it has cut like wildfire. We keep getting donations. Recently we got an international donation from my church, in Houston, And there's so many other local companies here who we're trying to speak with in terms of doing that, because like I mentioned, these guys that you're looking at cannot afford to buy these cylinders. So what we do is that we give them the cylinders, the burners on top, so that they can easily put their pots on it, and then we fill it up with gas, because then it's now easier for them to refill the gas. To refill this gas, it will cost them about $3 or less, just because of the fluctuations in USD. But the truth is, they can decide to just fill 1 kg or 2 kg of gas or 3 kg of gas, depending on how much they require. But this is the first hurdle whereby we're able to help them secure the cylinders. So I'm going to show you a very brief video of the advocacy we have done so far in terms of the CSR that Smart Gas is doing.
I thank you all for what you have done. God continue to bless you. Thank you, Smart Gas, for giving me this opportunity by using gas. Smart Gas. Gas don't be funny. I think we're going to come big gas. I see one my boy, one my rook. Yes, I want. It's a rush. You know, as if I Thank you so much. May God bless the company and the good I choose this name.
Okay, so that's a summary of what we do, and and to hear these guys, the way they pray for us in different languages, the way you see how a lot of them are crying, tears off their faces. There's really nothing that is as humbling as this, quite honestly. It makes everything worthwhile for us. And of course, our customer acquisition strategies in terms of our online marketing, we're big on social media, on our different platforms. We do the traditional, billboards, flyers, and all that. Our CSR, like I said, we're big on that as well. Our technology is something on the mobile app. We intend to constantly, improve our functionalities. The advocacy is also very important, because quite a number of times when we deliver these cylinders, a lot of them don't even know how to operate them. And we have to tell them what to do. Don't turn on the gas before you ignite your matches. You have to do this and that. So it comes with a lot of dedication, and we're collaborating a lot, like I said. We're collaborating with retailers, we're collaborating with drivers, we're collaborating with the public, just to continue with the awareness. And lastly, in terms of our future outlook, there's the intra-African expansion we're looking at. It's an extremely viable and scalable market. We're also looking at local manufacturing of these cylinders in Nigeria, and that way we have to speak, and look for funding, because it's an extremely capital-intensive business, manufacturing cylinders or even importing the cylinders. And then increase adoption, amongst the lower income people through our foundation. And we'll continue to explore more alliances and collaborations, but I'd like to briefly touch on some of the challenges of doing business as a woman in Nigeria and then in the oil and gas sector. So just like Melyssa said, I think that's the end of my slide. So just to conclude, I'll stop sharing my slide now. Just like Melyssa mentioned, it is really difficult to do business in Nigeria in the oil and gas sector because number one, the leadership and the government haven't really made it very easy for us to access all those things. You literally have to get your own fuel, get your own lights, get your own water, get your own. So the energy you're meant to spend, on doing other things, you focus on other things. So there's an FX issue because you have to convert the money to FX to be able to buy them from China. And then there's the shipping lines, there's the clearing cost, there's the customs, there's the government bureaucracy because you require certain approvals and permits to operate in that sector. And then there's so much bureaucracy in that. There's lack of funding. They tell you there's so many intervention funds, you go and request for them, but they're not able to really implement that. And then being a woman as well, they're wondering, there's so many times I go for meetings and they're like, are you the CEO or are you representing the person? So sometimes it's condescending, but you just really have to look beyond that as a woman. And like Melyssa said, you just have to, continue to change narrative and just reject what the narrative is and just do what you think, it's good for the people to do. So for us, it's nice that we know what competition is doing, but I'm not overwhelmed by it, quite honestly. I'm focusing on the market. I'm focusing on the value that we are giving to people. I'm focusing on the fact that, we are being socially responsible, corporately responsible in terms of the energy transition, and it's really on so many levels, beyond what the financial gains are, touching the lives of people. That's what our whole existence is all about. So I'm really happy to pioneer Smart Gas. I have a team of young, dynamic people, and it's really been an humbling experience, honestly, to be able to contribute our quota, in the industry. So I think at this point, I'm going to stop. And thank you very much for the opportunity to share our story.
That's so interesting. The reason that Dr. Opeke is speaking here is because the folks at Rice pointed me at her, and the first conversation I had with her, I was like, oh my gosh, she's amazing. So actually, one of our people has some questions for you. So. And this is a question I also had. Do the cylinders have a thing that tells them when they're getting empty so that they know?
Very good point. Honestly, no. Because like I said, they're not at that point yet. Because the sensor that tells them that makes it more expensive.
Right.
They're still not at that point. At this point, you just want them to acquire the basics. Transition first, because those ones are like 3 times more than this. And now you see we're doing advocacy for people to even have the cylinders. Those who are even well-to-do don't want to buy the new cylinders because they're like, no, it hasn't exploded. It's okay. My grandma gave it to me. Nobody wants to buy a new cylinder because it's not in the culture. So we have some people who try to get those kind of cylinders, but it's not working because people are we're not yet there. Yeah, so you really have to understand the market to know when to introduce certain products.
And then her other question was, she said the app is incredible. How do you get retailers to participate, especially through the lens of a woman entrepreneur? You have to go to them and convince them that they want to work with you. Okay,
so I do a lot of emotional intelligence, trust me. People always say that sometimes, I accept my sexuality, but it's not my totality. So sometimes you go to so many places and you do like the damsel in distress, and the fact that they know the face and the brand behind the product, some just do because they like you. And then they now like you, they now see that, wow, your product is of value, and then they become loyal customers. We do a lot of social media as well. We do the blogs, we do the skit makers. We are in the news all the time. There's a budget for that, So a lot of awareness. And then we go to stations, for example, where you have like the Uber drivers, they have registered stations. We go to those kind of places to tell them that you can also be a smart gas driver. And then we also do incentives. Sign up as a retailer and earn 2,000 Naira instantly. So that is like direct marketing, So we do different stuff, just to get people to sign on the app, because the more signups we have, the more sales they make, the more money we make.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Does anyone else have any other questions?
Well, it's not a question, but I was really inspired by this presentation and your video. And I think also the one aspect when I saw the video that just became so apparent is that, of course, you're helping the families, but the first line is the women, right? They do the cooking 95% of the time, right? So this is also making their life safer, easier. And I really appreciate that aspect, right? Because you're thinking with that mind, right?
Yes.
How do I help my fellow women?
Exactly. Thank you. And then that's one of the reasons why Smart Gas has really become so popular, because it's male dominated. They're usually thinking of the hard stuff, the money. But you being a woman, you understand and you empathize. And then when you're able to appeal to the emotions of people, the people are your customers. So from just the way you have said it, now it's making me think that is really why. Maybe because I'm a woman, that's why the foundation is a big deal to me, because none of them is doing it. And that has really given us a lot of, boost into the market. We're able to compete with the Mobiles, the Oandos, because our model is just different.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you for your word. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Opeke. That was amazing. It was way more information than I had the first time, and I'm still very excited. Actually, if you have a link for us to contribute to your foundation, I bet you some people on this call would contribute as well. So
wow, thank you.
If you want to paste a link in the chat, or Miracle, if you have a link, we would contribute to your foundation.
Thank you so
Great
much.
point,
Wow.
Melyssa.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate. Thank you so much. I appreciate. And well done,
Absolutely.
Melyssa. Well done.
Absolutely. I think a lot of us would. So please share that. Okay, we're going to move on to our next speaker. So I'm going to share my screen again real quick. Is that the screen I want? Yes. Okay, and our next speaker, come on, is Jessica Dagostini. Jessica is from the Universidade Federal de Rio Grande do Sul in Porto Alegre, Brazil. And she is getting her master's, and she's going to talk about her project, which actually is at the intersection of HPC and energy exploration. So now I'm going to stop sharing, and Jessica can share her screen.
Perfect. Thank you, Melyssa. Let me just here.
There we go.
Perfect. Let me just see you all. Great. So first of all, I'd like to thank the opportunity to speak with you today. It was a really pleasure to me to be here and to be able to hear all these incredible stories. So really, one more time, really congratulations, Yinka. Olayinka. I don't know if I speak your name correctly, sorry, but it was an incredible story. So I will present here a little bit of my master work that is entitled Performance Improvements Applied in an Electromagnetic Inversion Application Focused on Homogeneous and Heterogeneous Computation Environments. This master work was developed inside the infrastructure of Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul in the Institute of Informatics, and was supported by Petrobras, that is an oil and gas company here in Brazil. And I was advised by Professor Lucas Melyssa. So the application that we studied in this work will use the data collected from the Marine Controlled Source Electromagnetic Method. This method will use receivers that will be positioned in the seabed to collect the electromagnetic data from this underwater region. And electromagnetic emitter source will be coupled to a ship, and this ship will navigate throughout all the area where these receivers were set, and will be emitting electromagnetic waves. Such waves will traverse the subsurface of the region and will reflect, and this reflection will be collected by these receivers. From this data, we can recover the resistivity of the materials underground And because of the oil and gas have known resistivity signatures, we can identify possible regions of oil and gas reservoirs. So the data collected from these receivers is not understandable. We need a numerical method to recover the actual data that is interesting for us, that is the resistivity, the electromagnetic resistivity of the material underground. But it's a big quantity of data that this method collects, because it's a huge space where these receivers are set, and the inversion process is computationally expensive to execute. This way, we need that this inversion process runs in parallel using high-performance clusters, and that's where I came from. So the application that we studied in this work will use a common midpoint technique that will actually match the data collected from the receivers with a resistivity model that is also an input from the application. This common midpoint technique will use a geographical midpoint of the distance between the receiver and the emitter source, that in this plot are represented by these red triangles that are the receivers, and these blue dotted lines that are the place where the emitter source pass through. So the geographical midpoint distance between the receiver and the emitter will be mapped to a CMP cell of the resistivity model that are represented in this plot by these circles in gray. The application will try to map the geographical midpoint to a CMP cell according to some parameters that are passed through the input of the application also, and they will map different quantity of pairs, source receiver pairs in these CMP cells. So for example, in this point, we have 93 pairs allocated to this cell, and in this other point, we have 399 cells. This is one of the first steps of the application that is based on a numerical inversion process that follows all these steps that I put in this slide. So this application will perform an 1D inversion of a 3D data, and we'll do that in parallel. So we'll use a master worker paradigm to execute this in parallel. And we'll have two main phases, the forward and the smoothing, that will be parallelized. In this work, we focus our efforts on the forward phase. So we instrumented the application to understand its behavior, and we find out the first thing of the distribution of the number of SR pairs to our CMP resistivity map. And we had this visualization. So in the x-axis, we have the CMP index from 0 to, in this study case, varying from 0 to 451. And we have on the y-axis the SR pairs, the source receiver pairs, linked to each CMP cell. So we can see that these cells have different quantities of SR pairs linked to it, and the cells with less quantity of pairs has a difference of 4 times with the cells with most quantity of pairs linked to it. We then follow to get traces from the application, looking for the time spent throughout the iterations. So we ran the application using 64 MPI workers, and we're disabling OPMP threads because the application also has this support. And we have here mapped the 3 main phases of the application, where the forward, that our focus, is the blue one. We have in this plot the x-axis showing the time spent in seconds, and the y-axis the parallel workers. And we see that the parallel worker 0, for example, take less time to execute than the parallel worker 15, 16. And we see that we have a load imbalance that comes from the forward phase. and it is caused by the original distribution strategy that the application applies to the problem. So this original distribution will consider the total quantity of CMP cells of the study case to divide throughout all the MPI workers that we are executing the application. And it actually disregards the heterogeneous load that each one of the CMP cells will have. So in this example, we have eight ranks and workers, and the first worker will receive less than a half of the work that the rank 1 will have to execute. And this is the cause of the load imbalance. To solve this problem, we start to look for state-of-art solutions for balancing our problem. And we have a specific problem that we call in the literature like number partitioning problem. And these have really well-known solutions to solve it. So we choose 4 solutions, 2 for homogeneous environments and 2 for heterogeneous environments, where the 2 first are round robin and sorted greedy, and the 2 seconds is the ABE, that is an acronym from area bound estimation, that is a linear programming that is originally used to task-based application, but we adapted to our problem. And the second one is the HEFT algorithm, that is the acronym from heterogeneous earliest finish time. We adapt these 2 algorithms to our problem. So the first thing that we start to look for when we go through the results of our studies was to a theoretical strong scaling of our application using our 3 homogeneous distribution policies. So here we have a plot where we have on the x-axis the number of workers varying from 0 to 451. That is total number of the CMP cells that we have in this study case that we are using in these executions. And in this top plot, we have on the y-axis the distance from the ideal load balance, and this bottom plot, the maximum load in log scale. So the first thing we can observe here is that the round-robin sorted grid solutions will increase their distance and the maximum load more smoothly than the original policy that already make us have a gain on the application. We also can observe that all 3 approaches will present an increase in the total distance from the ideal load balance when the number of workers exceed the half quantity of CMP cells. And when we achieve the total quantity of workers equal to the CMP cells, our maximum load will be equal to the largest CMP cell size. And this limits the application scalability. So the first real execution that we execute was a make span of the 3 homogeneous heuristics executing 100 iterations of our numerical process in our local cluster called Draco, which is composed of 7 nodes with 16 cores per node, giving a total of 112 MPI ranks. So we could improve our application using the sorted greedy approach with a gain of 41% of make span time, decreasing from 7,000, almost 8,000 seconds of execution to 4,600 seconds of execution with sorted greedy. After that, we aim to extend our solutions to execute our application in heterogeneous machines without changing on processor's frequency. And we choose 2 heuristics to that are those that I previously presented, that is the ABE guided and the HEFT algorithms. We selected 3 different machine combination scenarios to execute and test these heuristics that are depicted here. We named them as ABC study case, where the study case A has 304 cores involved, and the B and C scenarios has 112 to easily compare these solutions with the homogeneous scenario. So the first thing that we aim to observe was the iteration time in each scenario with each heuristic. So we executed 10 repetitions of our application with 10 iterations each, giving a total of 100 iterations. And we plot here the average time in seconds on the y-axis that each one of our approaches took to execute in the scenarios. We also use the sorted grid here to present a comparison among our best homogeneous solutions executing in heterogeneous scenarios. So we are able to see through this plot that even on scenario A, that we pass through the half quantity of CMP cells using more workers than the half of quantity of CMP cells in the study case, we still have impressive improvements on time spent, having a 9 seconds of iteration time here. And B and C scenarios, we also have improvements where the Heft algorithm proved to be the best solutions from these 3 approaches, 3 scenarios. We also execute a makespan for these heterogeneous solutions, also with 100 iterations from scenarios A and B. And comparing with the original scheduler on the homogeneous scenarios, we could achieve a performance gain of 7-8% using our Heft solution. So in this work, we investigated the computing performance of this NPI-based inversion application of data from the MCSEM method, and we identified an issue regarding the loading balancing of the application, and we could solve it. And we achieved the performance improvement of 41% on homogeneous scenarios and 78% on heterogeneous scenarios. We also could develop a capacity planning tool to further predict the best execution scenarios that will allow users to predict how it will be the behavior of the application in a diverse set of possible scenarios. And some results of it are available at this link that because of the time, I will not have time to discuss it. So I would like to also thanks one more time for Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul, Institute of Informatics, and Petrobras for making this research possible. And that's it. Also, thank you all for your time, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Jessica. Yay! So when do you finish? When do you graduate? When are you finished?
Next Friday.
Woohoo! Yay!
Thank you. I'm really excited.
Questions, comments from the peanut gallery? Anybody? It's very technical. So
Jessica, how big are these data sets that you're applying these algorithms to?
Mm-hmm. So those that we are using here, we have, I think, 300 megabytes, something like that. But the inversion process is really expensive, is computationally expensive, because we have to proceed all of this in this parallel way, and it compute each point of this mapping method that I mentioned here. So it is really expensive, not only because of the size of the data, the model, but it's because it really have to pick up each one of these data and reproduce. So we have more than 100,000 of single points that we need to process.
wow.
I see. So basically, you're in this scenario where you're collecting the data.
Oops.
Yeah, she
froze.
She froze. Yeah.
An edge computation right there on site.
I'm sorry, we couldn't
You're-
hear
you-
you.
You froze in the middle of your question, Christina.
Yeah, could you repeat, please?
Do you want to type it in the chat instead? She'll type it.
Okay.
Typing fast, or she turned off her video. Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much, Jessica.
Thank you all for having me here.
It was great. Thank you. And now I am going to go back to sharing my screen. This, and we will go to the last couple of things I want to talk about is our theme for the year. We decided that we want to talk about data bias, right? You've heard about this in the news. It's basically becoming a major factor in our lives. And the three biggest examples that I could find, basically, Amazon's recruiting machine learning system was biased against women, which is an interesting one. A self-driving Uber car that hit and killed a woman because it doesn't understand. Nobody told the system that pedestrians jaywalk. And racial discrimination in face recognition technology, which I'm sure you've also heard about. So Amazon's recruiting system, hold on, let me close this. Is this working? Yes, okay. Amazon's recruiting system, they wanted to, oops, go back, sorry. They wanted to score the resumes they got based on, 1 to 5 stars, right? Everything in Amazon is scored based on 1 to 5 stars. And so the models were trained on data from resumes that had been submitted over a 10-year period. The problem is that most of them came from men because male dominance across the tech industry is basically the norm. And so Amazon's system taught itself that male candidates were preferable, and it penalized resumes that included the word women's, as in women's chess club captain, and it downgraded graduates to all women's colleges. And gender bias was not the only issue. So ultimately, Amazon had to disband the development team and now uses a watered down version of the tool. Are you guys seeing my screen okay? Is that working?
No,
I can't see this.
No, we can't right now.
Oh, that's the
Yeah.
problem. Sorry, I'm talking and it's not working. Okay. Why is this not working? That is the problem. Haha, okay. Let's try again. There we go. It works now. That's better. Okay. I knew something was wrong. I knew something was wrong. It was a little weird. Anyway, so here's all the stuff I said about Amazon. I find it very annoying that, this is how the system works, right? The artificial intelligence learns from whatever you feed it, and this is what it learned. We've heard all the news stories about race and facial recognition. Facial recognition is actually the least accurate form of the biometrics, eyeballs and fingerprints and things like that. And of course is rife with privacy concerns because about half of American adults, and this is from 2016, so I'm sure the number is bigger now, have been photographed, and they're in a facial recognition network that law enforcement uses. And they found over time, and this is a Harvard study, that the poorest accuracy was consistently found in subjects who are female, Black, and 18 to 30. And so there was this thing called the Gender Shades Project that went through and did all this research and looked at in the various different kinds of facial recognition, right? Because IBM has one, Amazon has one, Microsoft has one, that still darker skinned females were the ones who were not being identified properly. And because Black Americans are more likely to be arrested, as we've all learned in the last 2 years, and been forced to reckon with, Black Americans are more likely to be arrested and incarcerated. So the mugshot data, which they're using to train the model, is full of Black faces, right? And then you have another challenge that we've learned through people using iPhones is the cameras not recognizing Black faces. So you have both this, there are too many Black faces, and they're not recognizing them because they're not taking pictures well. So there's all of this data bias, and a lot of it is from who's programming the models, right? So what can we do to overcome the data bias? There are basically 6 common types. 2 of them we've literally just talked about, but confirmation bias, which is your social media echo chamber. If all you read is the news you get from the same 3 sources, then you will always have the same, as unbiased as you want your news to be, it isn't always. And so you will only always get the same tilt to your news and not hear any other kinds of contrary thoughts. Selection bias, right? If you are going to test your product with a bunch of people, you want to make sure that you are testing with a broad swath of people and not just the same. You know, if everyone you test your product with is a young white male, then you're clearly not getting the whole community, and you're not going to get the same kind of feedback that you would if you diversified your testing group. Historical bias, which is the Amazon thing, the resumes that are all trained on male resumes. Survivorship bias is, you know, when you hear presentations or when you see the example that's given is the Olympics, right? You can think back to remembering who the gold medal winner was of the swimming races, right? Because it was always Michael Phelps. But who came in second, right? Who came in, and you might remember gold, silver, and bronze for some things. Will you ever remember who came in 4th or who came in last? And, you know, even for entrepreneurs who are as successful as Yinka, what are the other entrepreneurs trying and failing at that maybe you could look at what they've done and try again, but tweak something and do it differently. You know, failure is just as important to learn from as success. Availability bias, just because something is new and cool and you see it advertised everywhere doesn't mean it'll work for you or for your company. And outlier bias. This one is, I thought this was very interesting. Averages are a great place to hide uncomfortable truths. If most of your website is working great and on average, everything is doing well, but in some pages, things are not working or some parts are not working. Well, on average, everyone is having a good experience, but there are outliers, and the outliers are the things you need to pay attention to and make sure that you address. So I thought all of those were interesting points and ways that we can think differently about what we do. So we're going to have a book club. Texas Women in HPC has decided that since we're doing data bias this year, we are all going to read Invisible Women, Data Bias in a World Designed for Men. I participated in a webinar a couple of weeks ago with women who were from law enforcement and medicine and the auto industry. And when you hear the stories of women in law enforcement, fire department, Secret Service even, who don't have the right equipment because it was all built for men. And so the women are in more danger, you know, women in car crashes, right? Women tend to get injured more or even survive less because airbags and car seats and all of those things were designed for men. And when they're asked to design for women, they just design for a smaller man, which doesn't help. And in clinical trials, right, women's bodies are very confusing to doctors, apparently, and particularly with hormones. When you test a drug, they have historically pretty much only tested on men. How do you make sure that, you know, women aren't going to get sicker or maybe even be helped more if you're not testing on men? So we wanted to read this book and talk about it. We will send out a date, a book club discussion date. It'll probably be in June. It might be in person, depending on how the COVID world is going. But the book is about how, you know, product designers, as I've just said, use a one-size-fits-all approach. And in fact, this approach is designed to fit men. And so we want to talk about not only how this happens and how, but also how we can address it moving forward. And if you would like to participate in book club, please send me an email at Texas Women in HPC, texaswhpc@gmail.com. Okay, what else can you do? Be an ally. Speak up if you see something, report it, or if you need to be anonymous, At UT, we have an ombuds person that you can report things to, for example. Look for places to provide mentorship and sponsorship and support. Like we all want to support Yinka's foundation to give more women access to those fuel canisters. Look at family-friendly working policies and attend more women in HPC events. Yay! Which hopefully there will be some. There will definitely be a workshop at SC and probably one at ISC. So that is all of my blabbering on for today. So I'm going to stop sharing. Does anybody have any questions or comments or other things they'd like to say?
Well, it was very great to see some friendly faces today. I feel so energized and I feel empowered and going back to work with renewed energy and with a sense of purpose. I think that's what we get from inspirational talks like yours. And then I think this is March, right? This is Women's Month. So let's try everybody to do a little bit every day, right? It's very easy to be caught in all the emotions of the day and in everything that's happening on a global scale. It's also very easy to get just totally absorbed by what we have to do for our work, of course, our families. But let's continue this path of helping each other and empowering each other. I think that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I also think that sometimes we overthink things, but you need to understand that you can contribute your own quarter, hoping that the next person will rise to the occasion and contribute theirs as well. Because you hear a lot of people saying, oh, how much will this do? How can I do this? And then they end up not doing anything at all. But whatever little you do, can still make a big difference in somebody's life, so, and that's why I'm happy that Melyssa and so many other women around the world, they're pulling their weight, they're speaking up, people are hearing their voices, and just do what you have to do and just leave the rest, for the world to, to do their quarter, so well done to everybody trying to drive change in your various, spheres of influence. Well done.
Thank you very much.